Welcome to Stage 6, the final era known as the Age of Decadence. This is the period where the empire begins to rot from the head down. It is not an explosion, but a slow, painful suffocation of the soul. The great projects of the past are abandoned and forgotten. The bridges rust, the roads crack, and the statues are covered in graffiti. The people no longer believe they are building a future. They are just trying to survive the present. Politics stops being about policy and becomes a looting operation. The leaders do not enter office to serve the state or the people. They enter office to get rich quickly before the ship finally sinks. Civil war moves from the battlefield to the parliament floor. The different factions of the empire hate each other more than they hate the foreign enemy. They would rather see their own country fail than see their political rivals succeed. The welfare state explodes in size, becoming a monster that cannot be fed. The mob demands free bread, free housing, and free money. The treasury borrows from tomorrow to pay for today, ensuring that tomorrow will never come. Religion and shared faith begin to die out, leaving a spiritual vacuum. When people believe in nothing, they will fall for anything. They turn to superstitions, cults, and radical ideologies to fill the empty space in their chest. The birth rate drops below the replacement level as hope evaporates. Why bring a child into a world that feels like it is ending? The playgrounds are quiet, but the nursing homes are overflowing. The empire goes on the defensive, building walls instead of expanding borders. They are terrified of the outside world, yet they are dependent on it. They pay tribute to their enemies, hoping to buy peace, but they only buy time. Historians notice a strange obsession with gender and fame during this stage. The heroes are no longer the stoic men of action. The heroes are the ones who can shout the loudest and act the most outrageous. Debauchery becomes the standard of public life. What was once shameful is now celebrated on the front page. The moral compass of the nation is spinning wildly, unable to find north. Sir John Glubb pointed out that this decline comes from an excess of wealth and power. We are victims of our own success. We have forgotten that freedom is not free. It is a rental payment that is due every day. Now look at the timeline of the great empires of the past. The Assyrian Empire lasted 247 years. The British Empire, from the Acts of Union to the loss of India, lasted 246 years. The Spanish Empire, from its peak to its collapse, lasted 255 years. The pattern is so precise, it is terrifying. It is almost as if there is a biological clock ticking under the floorboards of history. Now, let us do the math for the American Empire. The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. If you add 250 years to that date, where do you land? You land on the year 2026? We're not approaching the deadline? We are living in the final seconds of the countdown. The signs of Stage 6 are screaming from every screen in your house. The debt is vertical. The division is violent. The decadence is celebrated. The world watches the giants stumble, and the vultures begin to circle. Foreign powers, once afraid of the eagle, now begin to test its claws. They sense the weakness, and they are preparing their own rise. But the citizens are too distracted to notice the knives being sharpened. They are arguing about pronouns and statues while the currency collapses. They are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic while the iceberg looms ahead. The collapse, when it comes, is usually triggered by a shock. A sudden war, a pandemic, or a financial crash that breaks the camel's back. But the shock is not the cause of death. It is just the final blow to a body that is already dying. The systems that used to work suddenly seize up. The supply chains break. The power grid flickers. The police stop answering the phone. Chaos descends rapidly as the thin veneer of civilization is peeled away. It turns out that order was fragile all along. It was held together by trust. And when trust vanishes, barbarism returns. The cities, once the jewels of the empire, become dangerous traps. The wealthy flee to their bunkers and their private islands. The poor are left to fight over what remains in the ruins. This is the winner of the cycle. The cold wind blows through the marble halls as the music has stopped and the lights are turning off one by one. But you must understand that this is not the end of the world. It is only the end of an era. History hates a vacuum, and something new always rushes in to fill the void. The fall of Rome gave birth to the nations of Europe. The fall of Britain gave birth to the American century. The death of the old is the fertilizer for the new. The question is not whether the cycle will break. The cycle never breaks. The question is what will rise from the ashes of the West. Will it be a new age of freedom, or will it be 1,000 years of darkness? The choice is usually made by those who prepared for the winter. Great empires do not die by accident or bad luck. They die because they have a biological lifespan that cannot be changed. Just as a human being lives for 80 years, an empire lives for 250. You can set your watch by this cycle because it has happened 10 times in history. From the Assyrians to the Persians to the Greeks, the timeline is always the same. And if you look at the calendar, you will see that America is at year 249. Historian Sir John Glubb studied this pattern across 3,000 years of human history. He found that it does not matter what technology you have or what god you worship. Every superpower goes through the exact same 6 stages before they collapse into dust. The cycle always begins with stage 1, which historians call the Age of Pioneers. This is when a small, tough group of people bursts onto the world stage. They are poor, they are hungry, and they have nothing to lose but their chains. Think of the early Romans fighting in the mud with rusted swords. Think of the American settlers pushing west across a dangerous and unknown continent. These people possess a warrior energy that the established empires cannot understand or stop. They are not driven by greed, but by a sense of duty and survival. They are willing to sacrifice their lives for a vision of the future. This shared struggle creates a bond of unity that acts like concrete for the foundation of the empire. This victory leads to stage 2, the Age of Conquests. The pioneers have secured their homeland, and now they look outward. Their armies are disciplined, their generals are brilliant, and their enemies are weak. They expand their borders and absorb their neighbors into the growing machine. The maps are redrawn every single year as the empire consumes everything in its path. The oil paintings of this era show victorious generals riding white horses through cheering crowds. But this conquest is not just about land. It is about gathering resources. Gold flows into the capital city like a river that never dries up. The rough pioneer villages turn into cities of marble and stone. This wealth triggers stage 3, the Age of Commerce. The warrior puts down his sword and picks up the merchant's scale. The empire is now safe enough for trade to flourish across thousands of miles of road and sea. Ships arrive in the harbor, carrying spices, silks, and luxuries from the corners of the earth. The sons of the pioneers are no longer soldiers. They are businessmen and traders. The value of a man is no longer measured by his bravery, but by his bank account. This is the era that feels the best to live in. The middle class grows fat and happy on the spoils of the empire. Optimism is the religion of the day, and everyone believes the good times will last forever. But hidden inside this wealth is a silent poison. The focus of the society shifts from duty to the nation to profit for the self. The unity that built the empire begins to crack as the gap between the rich and the poor widens. This leads us to stage 4, the Age of Affluence. The empire is now so rich that money has lost its meaning. The struggle for survival is a distant memory that grandparents talk about, but grandchildren do not understand. The citizens become obsessed with comfort and entertainment. They build massive stadiums to watch athletes fight, distracting themselves from reality. They demand that the state take care of them, solving problems that they used to solve themselves. Hard work is looked down upon as something for the lower classes. The wealthy youth spend their time debating philosophy and art, but they do not know how to build a wall or fight a war. The muscles of the empire have turned to fat. It is here that the concept of honor is replaced by the concept of celebrity. The heroes are no longer the men who defend the walls. The heroes are the actors, the singers, and the influencers who entertain the bored masses. Because the citizens are too comfortable to fight, the empire begins to hire mercenaries. Rome hired the barbarians to guard their borders because Romans refused to serve. Today we rely on technology and proxies because we have lost the stomach for the trench. This affluence creates a false sense of moral superiority. The empire believes it has reached the peak of human evolution. They lecture other nations on how to live, unaware that their own foundation is rotting from the inside out. The leaders become arrogant, believing their power is a law of physics rather than a temporary gift. They stop listening to the people and start listening to their own echoes. This is the moment the empire unknowingly crosses the halfway point of its life. Historian John Glubb noted that this transition brings a shift in the mind. The people become more intellectual but less practical. They can argue about complex theories, but they cannot fix a leaking pipe. This is stage 5, the age of intellect. The universities are full, but the factories are empty. We produce endless words and arguments, but we produce fewer and fewer tangible things. Arguments break out over minor social issues, while the barbarians sharpen their swords at the gate. The society splits into tribes, fighting each other instead of the external enemy. The unity of the pioneer age is completely dead. During this stage, the birth rate usually collapses. People are too focused on their own pleasure and careers to make the sacrifice of raising children. They import labor from other nations to do the work they refuse to do. The capital city becomes a melting pot of cultures, which brings vibrancy, but also confusion. The original identity of the empire dissolves into a vague soup. No one quite remembers what it means to be a Roman or a Briton or an American. The currency begins to lose its value as the government spends more than it earns. They print money to pay for the welfare, the wars, and the luxuries. The coin that used to be pure silver is now copper washed in a thin layer of shine. Inflation rises, eating away at the savings of the working class. But the rich do not care, because they own the assets that rise in price. The division between the elites and the people becomes a canyon that cannot be bridged. Trust in the institutions hits an all-time low. The people know their leaders are lying, and the leaders know the people know. It is a pantomime of governance where nothing actually gets done. The military, once the pride of the world, becomes bloated and expensive. It wins battles on paper but struggles to win wars on the ground. The technology is advanced, but the warrior spirit is gone. We are now standing at the precipice of the final transition. The clock has ticked past year 240. The age of intellect is ending and the final, most brutal stage is beginning. But before we close the book on history, we must look at the specific weapons of this transition. The collapse of the 2020s will not look like the collapse of Rome in 476 AD. They fought with swords and shields. But we are fighting with algorithms and assets. The dying empire has one final trick up its sleeve to maintain control. It is what economists call financial repression, but you should call it the cage. It is the attempt to lock you inside the burning building so you cannot escape with your wealth. We are seeing the rollout of programmable money that expires if you do not spend it. They will tell you it is for stimulus and efficiency. But in reality, it is a leash that connects your ability to eat to your obedience to the state. This is the great fork in the road for humanity. One path leads to a high-tech feudalism where you own nothing and rent everything. The other path leads to a sovereign future where you hold the keys to your own life. The 250-year cycle always destroys the middle class, but it creates a new class in its place. Let us call them the sovereign individuals. These are the people who use technology to detach themselves from the sinking ship. They work remotely, earning strong currencies while living in low-cost jurisdictions. They do not keep their savings in the banks of the dying empire. They hold assets that have no counterparty risk, like gold and code. This is the return of the city-state model from the Renaissance. As the giant federal governments fail to fix the potholes and stop the crime, power will shift down. Small, well-run communities will become the new centers of stability. We are already seeing the sorting mechanism take place. People are voting with their feet, moving millions of dollars in families across state lines. They are looking for pockets of sanity in a world that has gone mad. The empire will try to stop this migration with taxes and walls. They will demonize those who leave as traitors to the cause. But loyalty to a collapsing system is not patriotism, it is suicide. You must understand that the age of intellect has made us physically weak. We have traded our resilience for convenience. If the internet goes down for a week, how many of us can feed ourselves? The next phase of the cycle will punish the specialist and reward the generalist. The man who knows only one thing will be helpless when that one thing breaks. The man who knows a little bit about everything will be the king of his neighborhood. We need to talk about the psychology of the long descent. Most people will go through the 5 stages of grief when the check finally bounces. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. You want to reach the stage of acceptance before the crisis arrives. Panic is just the result of being surprised. If you accept the math of the 250-year cycle now, You will be calm when the headlines turn red. This calmness is your greatest asset in a time of chaos. When everyone else is selling the bottom in fear, you will be buying. When everyone else is screaming for the government to save them, you will be saving yourself. Let us look at the parallel economy that is rising in the shadows. It is a network of farmers, tradesmen, and creators, trading value for value. They are bypassing the broken currency and the surveillance grid entirely. This is how civilizations survive the Dark Ages. It is not through top-down decrees, but through bottom-up cooperation. The black market is often just the free market trying to breathe under the weight of tyranny. You should begin to build your own personal supply chain. Do you know the name of the farmer who grows your meat? Do you know a mechanic who will fix your car for cash? These relationships are worth more than a high credit score in the age of decadence. Credit score is just a number on a server. A handshake is a contract that survives the power outage. The education system of the empire is designed to create factory workers for a world that no longer exists. It teaches obedience, repetition, and memorization. It does not teach critical thinking, financial literacy, or survival. You must become the dean of your own university. You must unlearn the lies of the last 20 years. The history books were written by the people who printed the money. Read the books they don't want you to read. Study the Austrian economists who predicted this mess. Study the Stoic philosophers who learned how to stand tall while Rome burned. The technology of the future is not just AI and robots. It is also the greenhouse in the backyard. It is the solar panel on the roof and the water filter in the kitchen. High-tech problems often require low-tech solutions. The cyber attack cannot hack a gold coin. The algorithm cannot shut down a garden. We are entering a period of creative destruction. The old corporations that are bloated with debt will die. The old institutions that have lost their trust will crumble. This sounds scary, but it is necessary for the forest to grow. The dead wood is blocking the sunlight for the new saplings. The crash is the forest fire that clears the way for the next generation. You are that next generation, regardless of your age. The 250-year cycle is not a death sentence. It is a graduation test. It asks you one question: are you strong enough to rebuild? The people who built the aqueducts of Rome were not giants. They were men just like you, who decided to build something that would last. The people who wrote the Constitution were not gods. They were farmers and lawyers who decided to master their own fate. We have forgotten that we are the descendants of survivors. Your ancestors survived plagues, wars, famines, and ice ages. You carry their resilience in your DNA, buried under layers of comfort. It is time to wake that sleeping giant inside of you. Stop looking at the news and feeling small. Start looking at your hands and realizing what you can build. The empire is just a story we all agreed to believe in. When the story stops making sense, we write a new one. That is what we are doing right now. We are writing the opening chapter of the next 250 years. It will not be written by the politicians in the capital. It will be written by the people in the arena. So, here is your assignment for the transition period. Identify 3 things in your life that are dependent on the system, and find a way to make them independent. If you rely on the store for water, get a filter. If you rely on the bank for savings, get some metal. If you rely on the TV for truth, get some books. Small steps taken today compound into massive distance over time. You do not need to become a survivalist overnight. You just need to be 1% more prepared than you were yesterday. The herd is moving towards the cliff, driven by momentum. To turn around requires effort. To walk the other way requires courage. But when you turn around, you will see others walking with you. You are not alone in this realization. There are millions of us waking up at the same time. We are the remnant that historians talk about. The seeds of the future are carried in the pockets of the remnant. We preserve the best of the past to plant it in the spring. The winter is coming. Yes, the winter is followed by the spring. The 250-year cycle is a circle, not a straight line to hell. The darkness is just the womb of the new dawn. Do not fear the night. Prepare for the morning. Because when the sun rises on the other side of this transition, the world will belong to the builders. It will belong to the truthful. It will belong to you.